Hello. So this is just a short impromptu video I decided to do on how to adjust a flipper Fidelity bat after you've done the installations. Like typically, like when it comes to doing a standard flipper bat on any pinball machine, you have to do it from underneath the playfield by adjusting the clasp on the shaft basically, and adjust the tension, I should say. And then you have to obviously then fiddle around with the playfield, typically in an upright position. Sometimes you're fortunate, you can have the playfield pulled out and resting on top at an angle, but it's not always doable, especially with flippers that may be further up the playfield. So like typical examples are like this one on here on Rick and Morty, where you've got a flipper midway up the playfield. That's not really doable, especially if maybe you've got a narrow passageway on the side because it's jammed up against the side of a wall. So Flipper Fidelity, why did I choose them for this game? Let's start with that quickly, just for those that might be interested. They run basically with a metal bat and a metal shaft, as well as a metal bushing. A lot of people would probably argue a lot of the power that these games appear to get after having installations is done from the bushing alone, because the bushing is typically this piece of nylon plastic that sits between the acts basically as a, let's call it like as a collar for the shaft, and it sits obviously a little bit proud on the top side of the playfield where the shaft of the bat will go in. And typically you'll use sometimes you'll just use a small tool, like a little plastic tool, which they call like a flipper, how can I put it, a gap test or a gap gauge. And you want it so that the flipper bat is resting a little bit above the nylon shaft of the bushing. And if it's not, and it's grinding against the bat, it's basically plastic grinding on plastic, and that basically in itself absolutely kills the power to the point where you get what they call sticky flippers. Anyway, the reason I'm explaining all this is that with these games they use the metal bushings, as I mentioned, and because it's milled metal, I feel that there's less friction than it was with the typical nylon ones, and a lot of people argue, I would say, the power probably comes from that. There are, however, benefits from having the actual bats themselves over the bushings, and that's why I wanted to show off today. So I've got a little tool here that I've printed off. You can actually get this from Thingiverse. Just type in, like, I think it's just flipper alignment tool, and it will come up. I'm missing the extra little bit that you can add to it, which is just basically a measuring bubble, so you can see what angle you're trying to achieve. So this one's been set to effectively go to 6.5 degrees, which I would argue is probably factory default for a lot of games. They always want to operate around 6.5. And then what it will do is when you set it between the flipper bats, it will then tell you whether or not you've got your bats aligned. So you can see here on the right side, it's looking pretty good. It's basically running directly off the lane guide straight to the bat, and there's no gap there. So that's been aligned correctly. However, the left side isn't. If I remove the tool for a moment, face value, you could say, yeah, I can definitely see a difference, but it isn't always obvious. And having the tool just gets rid of that kind of guessing game of where it should lay. And some games will have a little hole here like that, but it isn't obvious, again, where that hole should sit. Now, this game would argue that, again here, if I just move that back, you can see it's just proud of or just shy, I would say, of where the rubber meets the hole. While other games would probably argue it's the tip of the bat is where the game should meet the hole. And some people will put like a toothpick in the hole and then align it that way, and they'll do it both without the rubber and with the rubber. In argument wise, I would say to get the right angle, at least on this one anyway, I would say it's better off that it's meeting the rubber, and that's just because of the way this guide's working at the moment. You can see here, like, even there I'm probably a little bit off, so we can go through and do an adjustment on that. Sorry, my hand keeps adjusting the focus, but let's go ahead anyway and adjust the bat. So basically you get this tool that's shipped with the actual kit itself, and what you need to do is undo this screw here, which is basically done via, let's move that tool out of the way. Let's see if I can get this done with one hand. It's not going to be that easy, I don't think. It's done via a typical Allen key socket thing. There we go. So if I get that undone. Now you think at that point, okay, what's the point of doing it this way? Well, the beauty of the way this kit is being built is you can do flipper alignment from the top side. So you place the kit here, or if you want to call it like the flipper removal kit, on top of there, and you can effectively, you don't really need to use an Allen key for this part. You can just screw them in by hand. They really don't need to be on rock solid. They just need to be tight enough to apply some, I would say, lateral force. Because what this is going to do is the screw that's sitting proud there at the top is going to burrow down as you screw in until it hits the base, and then that's going to act as leverage to then push the shaft up and pop the shaft off of the game, or off of the flipper back shaft, I should say. So just simply screw it in. Your screws might vary. This kit's kind of old. I think they've changed the length of the screws since I got it. I've seen on other pictures at least. But there were a lack of videos, and I just thought it'd be worth doing a quick visual tutorial for people. It also helps me remember how to do it, because I don't do many of these kits. You don't really need to do the kits on a lot of games. See that click? That isn't snapping, don't panic. That is literally just it going separate. So now you can undo the kit. But yeah, I would say Rick and Morty is one of the games you have to have the kit on. I mean, you don't have to have it, but it makes the game a far sight easier. That spider ramp, as I call it, is very hard to make with the standard flippers. I don't know what they were thinking when they built this game. It was probably just one of those things that I just find it suffers a little bit from geometry issues, this game. I love it to bits, but it really isn't that friendly to, I would say, a pinball novice. You really ought to have to hit it super clean without the flipper bats here. These add, I would say, probably about 20% more power, which is exactly what you need to make this game more friendly to people that might make a sloppy hit up there. So you can now see the bat has become separated from the shaft there, and the shaft has got kind of like, it's got like a rough textured feel to it, like it's got like a very finely milled teeth. And then on the interior of the bat, which I think kind of focus, thank you, there you go, you can see as well it's got all these grooves, and that's what adds as the friction on to help it stop it moving around. So in this case now I can pop that bat back on. I can then use my flipper alignment tool, and I can push the bat very simply to where I want it to be. You can see there, probably do need to do a bit of adjustment on the other side, but nothing major. Make sure that's nice and snug, make sure that feels level, and then simply what I want to be doing now is using a standard Allen key that I can't tell you what size it is. Actually I will bother to look and tell you. It is a, oh, it looks like it's a 1/8. It's a 1/8 Allen key. So obviously running on the Imperial system, it's an American kit. And again, I'm just going to make sure that my kit is sitting directly in the middle. And then you just tighten it up. And again, you can probably see now, that hole is sitting just shy of the rubber. Now I will have to tighten this up a bit more, but I'll need both hands to achieve that. But there you go, one bat aligned, and that is miles easier than doing that through a standard flipper. I can tell you that much. If anybody's done any flipper rebuilds in the past, you can kind of see why this kit makes it a lot easier. Underneath you get basically what they call a shipper shaft mod, which is an add-on. I think in argument wise it should be mandatory, but it's keyed. So where normal shafts are kind of round like my finger, it's square, and it comes with its own clasp for the square shaft as well. And that makes it impossible for the clasp to not be tight enough. A lot of bigger problems, I'd say, from doing flipper rebuilds, from anybody's experience, will be getting the tension tight enough so that when you go and play a game and the ball starts, when the bats, I should say, start going back and forth from the coils, snapping them back and forth, they sometimes come out of alignment because you haven't tightened it enough underneath, and it can be frustrating to get it tight. It's depending on how good the clasp have been made and the material they've been using, whether it's a decent metal or if it's some cheap like Chinese steel that basically like falls apart when you touch it. That could be make or break for you when you're trying to get your flippers aligned. So anyway, that's the video. I've tried to keep it 10 minutes. I'm peeking over to 11-minute mark. Hopefully you find it useful. Thanks very much.